developing bond markets can be summarized in one word: developing investor base. If we want to start with the foundation of bond market development, is to look at the savings pools. There are savings here, how we can try to move them attractively with very efficient means. When I go to many countries in Southeast Asia, and as we do in Pakistan, the reality is we've got to look at the savings, all right? And people tend to tell me, oh, we don't have these savings. No, you have savings. It's just in different forms and different buckets and different regulations, whether it's a bank or whether it's asset managers. So I think policymakers and in each country will need to look at the foundational savings pool. There are savings here. Now, where are they parked? How are they going to be mobilized more efficiently? You're never ready to start something new. So always start it. Because it's not like the Olympics where you train and then you're ready to start the race. So you're never ready for a green bond until you do the first green bond. InfraZamin stands ready to be that agent of change. We try to make things happen, and then from then we can feedback both to regulators and stakeholders so that we can bring the market forward.
When we look at the pools of saving that do exist in Pakistan, and you have insurance companies, life insurance companies, you have state pension funds, you have provident funds, you have asset management companies. The challenge is asking them to think beyond the 6-month, 1 year, or 5-year space. So how do we help in shifting that process, or using that process to shift the thought process of the investor community to thinking much longer term?
We need to do everything possible, both regulators and stakeholders and guarantors, to ensure that bonds are a very safe proposition, right? If you want more returns, go to equity. If you look at the composition of risk in Malaysia's very large bond market, which includes project bonds, bank sub-debts, and corporates, they are skewed this way from a risk rating profile. Very, very safe. So we're not like the US or developed markets where very few AAAs, and then as you go down, and there are a lot of BBBs, and there are even more junk, right? Those are a mature market profile. But I am of the belief that every emerging market would not get there and should not get there, because if you're looking at the capital markets serving the country that's developing, it would start this way.
Right, no, absolutely. And I think leading from your point, Pakistan's case has been in 2008 all the way to 2011, we suffered tremendous bond defaults. Some of those were restructured, some of them were not. And I think that has really scarred the market in terms of bonds not being safe, right? So one aspect is that. So how do you think, we have InfraZamin here, we are doing credit enhancement, but how can we scale this to really create that safety net for bonds, so that perception changes?
We're here to open pathways, not to be a permanent crutch for the investor base. Sukuk investors are very edgy. I want 100% bond guarantee. Or 90%, no. So, okay, 100%. Then we're doing a couple of 100%, and then people start complaining, you're distorting the market. Boo Hock, you're distorting the market. And then I said, no, there's no market to distort here, right? But I'm setting the standards, and then we move to a partial guarantee, which is quite easy to do with banks because they know the client, they can do it. But for a capital market, for the bonds, it's quite hard to do partial guarantees, right? The investor need to understand the underlying rating, this and that. But how we've addressed that is we've taken an intermediate step where we will guarantee the longer end of the bond, the longer tenured parts of the bond, 100%, and then there may be a shorter term bond that goes out to the market. And market players invest without the guarantee for their tranche, but with full confidence that the longer end tranche has been filtered, structured, and is still monitored together with the shorter end tranches.
Last point that I'll have is we are taking on riskier projects than perhaps the market is willing to absorb. What do you do in the case of debt restructuring? Because there will be defaults. It's inevitable. At some point in time, you will have a call on the guarantee. Of course, you service that through your capital, through the investor is protected. But also in terms of broader confidence in developing the bond framework, you do need to look at debt restructuring options, solutions that exist in the country. And that's a very important part of the legal framework as well. And banks are also troubled by it, asset managers, insurance companies, everybody struggles with that aspect. Guarantors are no less. How do you deal with that part?
Thank you for that question. Restructuring is a bad word for lenders and credit providers. It should not be. I would suggest we've done for corporate debt in Malaysia 2 rounds of corporate debt restructuring committee. These were, I think, anchored against is an initiative of the central bank. So you have a deputy governor sitting there, you have some independent members, you also have an executive director of the SEC on the committee that will accept debt restructuring requests, voluntary requests, on a very structured way. And then when a request to the committee comes, all lenders sign a standstill for 6 months, voluntarily, to work out a restructuring. And then some consultants are brought in, because when you have multiple creditors, this is where the problem starts. People holding out, senior lenders say, I am secured, you are going to get 0, I'm going to be 100%. And what you have is crash and burn. This was the 97-98 crisis. We did not sign up to IMF, and we saved ourselves in that way. Part of this mechanism was the CDRC, Corporate Debt Restructuring Committee. We don't have to do it for corporates. We should do it for projects. We should consider doing it for infra, green bonds, again, to protect that asset class. So what I'm proposing, and this has been done in Malaysia before, is have that intermediary step. So we don't have to have all the PDs and all that triggered, but we give it a chance for sanity to prevail when things do not go right? And then sometimes succeed, sometimes we don't, right? But there are frauds and all that, right? But those go through the normal legal process after a fair chance, is what I'm saying. Hopefully that's been helpful.
No, thank you very much. I think my key takeaways are create the safety in the asset class and then deal with defaults well before the actual default, however that can be done, because I think that lends to the safety, and that in itself should bring in the investors to those kind of bonds.
Grandma's money.
Grandma's money. And I think credit goes that the Malaysia's market is $400 billion worth of bonds, so it's not small. And they're really looking at everything from 10-year tenor to 30-year tenor, and that's fundamentally how the country's infrastructure has actually been financed. So a lot of learnings here. Thank you very much, Boo Hock, for making the trip down. Always a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much.